Perfect. Maybe first question, everyone knows what a VC is before I start talking about it. I mean, we're in San Francisco, but maybe people don't know. So I'm talking about sort of two titles, a VC's role in funding ambitious technology, but at the same time, a VC's role in translating science into technology. I'm not a scientist, first of all. Our co-founder should have given the presentation, but he wasn't able to come here. So I changed my plans and I'm here, but I'm probably not able to answer all the scientific questions, which I hope is fine. So I'll show this sort of role of a VC in that capacity on the example of Apollo Health Ventures, which is a transatlantic biotech VC that we spun out of the family office. We invested a lot in tech in the past, but realized that the next big thing will be biotech in our opinion, and especially longevity. So what do? We target age-related disease and aging itself. We consider us a first mover, meaning, as you can see here, we started in 2017, focused on transatlantic company building and investing in early stage companies. Some funds like Flagship Pioneering or Arch Ventures have allocated some of their billions under management to age-related disease as well, but not all of them are doing venture creation as well. And probably some of you have heard of Altos Labs, which is a company getting 3 billion, not million, billion in seed funding, which is insane from Jeff Bezos, Milner, and so on. So a lot more people, especially like the tech billionaires in the US, realized opportunity that's in that sector. And then there's, for example, also Saudi Arabia, which is spending $1 billion a year to target age-related disease. Why do we think that there is such a transformational opportunity in that space? That's three different reasons. The first one is the tech innovation, the scale, and then also the knowledge. For the tech innovation, things like gene editing are now possible, meaning that we can target a lot more diseases and develop better treatments than could have been in the past. With the scale, we're talking about lab automatization, meaning the use of machine learning, of robotics. Maybe some of you have heard of the human genome sequencing that took 13 years and $1 billion. Now we can do that in maybe a day or even 2 days for a few $100. So that's a huge opportunity. And then the third thing is the knowledge, meaning we're possible through a paper that was published about the hallmarks of aging, that we really understand aging on a biomolecular level. And can I continue?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. I'm so sorry.
That was for us that's not my slide. Sorry. That was for us like the main kickoff to invest into that space. So on the next page, let's see if you can see this well in a second.
It's this one. Yes. Okay. Oh, sorry. Give me 1 second.
So we decided to start investing in that space. I think what sets us apart a bit more than other VCs is that we not only go into the areas where there's already a founder, established company, a seed series A round, for example. What we want to do is that we want to also create companies. And the topic today is also about translating science into technology and into companies. What we realize, there's a lot of tech entrepreneurs, all the crypto bros starting companies, but a lot of scientists aren't eager to start a company to invest into like that space, do the fundraising, do the hiring. So we realized that's a huge opportunity.
Hold on, I'll go back to.
And
yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we currently only invest in therapeutics. What we want to do in the next fund is invest in adjacent technologies as well, meaning you can see that on the right, the data platforms and the devices. Why the therapeutics in the beginning? We think that there is, through, for example, gene therapies, there is a lot of opportunities that lie in the space of therapeutics that we can address many diseases that haven't been addressed in the past. So we focus on 3 verticals. The systemic longevity compounds. Most of you have heard of rapamycin, for example, and also 17-alpha estradiol is a really interesting compound, I would say, that we want to work on. Then the rejuvenation technologies and the neurodegenerative diseases. In addition, because we want to target aging and age-related disease, you may have heard it today in the longevity talks, the personalized medicine is a huge issue. Because we have standardized data, but let's say you look at your specific personalized data and you have a cold, I'm just recovering from a cold, like my numbers are completely different than they would normally be. So focusing on an ultra-personalized medicine is a huge advantage to optimize the therapeutics as well. And then with devices, you may have heard of Neuralink from Elon Musk. We've done 5 investments with the family office up till now, and want to continue that, especially like brain-computer interfaces. So, as already mentioned, we not only invest into best-in-class companies, but we not only do company creation as well, because we don't think that we're always the smartest people in the room. So for us, it's important to do both. In the current portfolio, we have 15 companies. 10 of them are on the left side, meaning we created them ourselves with scientists and research organizations, and then 5 traditional investments. Yes.
Is it a good time to ask a question?
Always.
Yeah. What is your venture creation model?
I'll come to that in a second, because that's the key point of how we translate the science into technology. So we have some really seasoned members with a scientific background from GSK, from Merck and Germany, and so on, in order to really focus on the venture creation. And we think that's a huge upside for investors, but also it's a huge upside for us as humanity, bringing these companies or these science into companies and bringing it to life. So the hallmarks of aging, there's 9 hallmarks of aging, the research paper that really brought forward the longevity research industry. And we can separate them into 3 different areas: the molecular alterations, cellular dysfunction, and tissue degeneration. We don't focus on only one thing. For example, Alphonse Labs with the 3 billion, they focus on cellular reprogramming, which is sort of considered the holy grail. We do that as well, but we also need to make money for our investors. And there's a company with 160 million under management, that's us, and 3 billion in seed funding that can fund research institutes and everything else. So we need to focus on more of the hallmarks, especially because they're also interconnected. We have a bit more exposure on the right side regarding the immune rejuvenation and the immune system in general, because the immune system has a systemic role in the aging as well. What is important for us, we had this discussion before, we're not a foundation, we also need to make money. Meaning what we look for is deep technology companies targeting the hallmarks of aging, but that can translate into companies in up to 10 years. So now we're talking about the venture creation. We defined a 7-step process in order to really go into the venture creation process, because we want to bring science into companies, but at the same time, we shouldn't waste any money. So what we defined is the selection, meaning we look for a topic, the exploration, ideation, diligence, conceptualization, foundation, and then the actual building of a company. So have maybe all of you heard of autophagy in the past, which is autophagy is a recycling process in your body, meaning cells can delete the damaged proteins. The older we get, the higher the accumulation of damaged proteins and the less autophagy process works. Meaning we looked at this topic, there's rapamycin, which is a well-established drug, prolonging the lifespan of mice in model or in research for up to 26%. Some of you may do intermittent fasting, which is also, some do it to lose weight, but it's more about the actual autophagy process. So there's a lot of science in there. And we said, okay, we want to explore the topic. So how do we actually do that? I'll dive deeper, then the ideation, then the due diligence. So in general, first of all, the topics, I mentioned them, the hallmarks of aging, and a bit more exposure to the immune system and also to inflammation. But then for the exploration, what you first do is that we look at all the science that got published. And then second of all, go to all these conferences and listen to all these amazing speakers like today. What are people actually looking at? What we don't do in the first step is go directly to one university, speak with them, and then create a company, because they're already biased. And we want to look, for example, at autophagy in general, look at different research, and then decide what is the best process in order to start this company. Bless you. Yes.
How is this resource? Like, do you have a team of people, and how
Yes.
then you are responsible?
So we have a team of 20 people, which are all scientists, besides, I think, 2 people, which are really involved in there. So we have partners, we have venture analysts, which are going to conferences, reading a lot. It sometimes takes 1, 2, or 3 years until we finally start a company, just because it takes time to really read into that. I wanted to give an example afterwards, but I'll just do it right now. So we did 2 neuroscience deals in the family office. What we did there is we were looking at the space and said, okay, we really think that neuroscience is a leading technology in the future. We brought together all of the leading scientists, meaning we contact them via LinkedIn or whatever, spoke with them in order to identify what are they actually working on, because we wanted to co-found companies with these scientists. And you can imagine we're speaking with 500 or even more people in order to like build a funnel and crumble it down to a few certain ones that we really like. We do case studies with them, virtual interviews. We then brought 6 people in a room in New York for a weekend and gave them, like, first of all, some really controversial ideas where they should like negotiate and talk in between themselves why it is a good idea versus not a good idea. Because we want to translate science into technology, so you can bring in the smartest people and let them sort of fight each other to really bring out the best technology. Bless you. And then what we also did is we told all of them to do a case study themselves. So one scientist is doing a case study. There's 5 more who are sort of an investment committee challenging the scientists. So in the end, we're the beneficiary because they are challenging each other. We're not the smartest people in the room, but then we can build a company with them. So we finally did that with 2 people, 1.5 years later. The other one with Rune Labs, we just got the FDA clearance for Parkinson monitoring, which is pretty amazing in our opinion. And then also we started Surrogate with Valent 1.5 years later, which is also performing pretty well. So that's like the case study of how we transform science into technology, bring in the smartest people in the room. And what's also like important after looking at all the literature is that we speak with people in all the big pharma companies because they're doing a lot of research as well. We're going to the universities. We're working with the MIT, Stanford, the Buck Institute of Aging, for example, in the US, University of Graz in Austria, the University of Paris, and a lot more in order to really identify the best technology that we can then translate into science. And then we developed an iterative process, meaning I just showed that on an example of all these neuroscientists. But what we want to do is we want to have finally a concept, sort of like a business plan, but more like an R&D direction. And what we do is that we have this hypothesis that we want to like evolve, then get feedback from the experts, then consult with the KOLs, meaning these are key opinion leaders, develop a proposal where the strategy is defined, then go into defining milestones, because I'm not sure how big you are into pharma. You need to develop milestones. When we invest up to 5 million in a company, we don't want to give this to a founder and say, have fun. We develop like targets or milestones in order to give them 500K to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 million in the beginning, and then follow on with more money if the science looks promising. So then we have the concept where we are looking at the milestones, the IP strategy, then the collaborators. So for example, what I want to mention here is also with the longevity space in general, what is now possible is that when we have an idea, we can call some CROs, a research organization in India that has a specific sort of mice that we want to like target our study, and we can start it a week later. That's now possible. In the past, that means 100 men working in a lab in order to do that. And then we also need to define the R&D plan budget. Then we're going into the foundation, meaning we need a shareholder agreement. We need to talk about the cap table, which is especially also important to keep the scientific co-founders on board, but also the institutions. Yes.
You disclose what those cap tables look like.
I prepared for that question because we're always getting that. It's completely depending on the people. If you have a scientist who's worked in different other projects in the past, which were successful, when we want to work with him, he's getting more equity. Then it's also depending on, let's say, an institution, for example, especially down there with the IP license or the tech access agreement. Depending on how much they want, how unique their technology is, we'll give them more equity and pay for it. And then the next thing is with the scientific co-founders, there's some people who more want to be an advisory role. They don't care about the money at all. So you can give them a smaller equity share versus people who want to like be involved in the company until it translates into like an actual therapeutic. So you need to give them more and regularly give them more equity. But we don't disclose the number of like the percentage that we give the people. And yeah.
Scientists who understand to be the CEO or
mainly the chief science officer. So when we start a company, we mostly have the chief science officer. There's one example where we hired the CEO, but we want to have like a really seasoned CEO along the way, but that's mostly happening at like a Series A. So for example, we start a company which is legally in the US because the US is better for follow-on funding, and funding is important to in the end have therapeutics. but we start with the science in Germany, for example, or we have a company in the Netherlands, Spain, Switzerland as well. So we start there, but without a CEO. And when we are ready for maybe seed to rather Series A, we can move part of the team or hire new people to the US, hire a seasoned CEO there, and he can take part of the team as well. But the really good CEOs, most of the time, you cannot hire them at like a pre-seed phase because they've already worked with a dozen or 100 people in the past. So we're talking about the consulting agreements with different experts and the co-founders, then about the IP license or the tech access agreement. The difference in there is we have, for example, a company called Focal Bioscience, where we are working with a research institute which doesn't have an IP, but they have a sort of technology which we really like in order to identify unique compounds. So we pay this institute in order to work with them to translate that into actual IP. And then on the building side, that takes a lot of work. So to also go back to the main topic of this discussion or this speak, is it's really important for us to take part in the fundraising process, in the business development, also to define a strategy, the operations. So for Samsara, for example, we worked with different CROs, but then started our own venture lab or our own lab as well in order to enhance the science and the research in there. And then HR is one of the most important topics that we have. We need to do a lot of recruiting in order to find the smartest people to actually build really good companies. That's only part of the team, especially the ones that are focused on the venture creation. We're 20 to 25 people, depending on who you count in there, which is a lot for 160 million. Venture creation takes a lot of work. And we're also mostly only possible to do that because our two co-founders and the GPs don't take any salary. So for them, it was important they made money in the past to really build successful companies, sell them in the future, and then also make money that they can live off, but hire more smarter people. The last example is Aeobian Pharmaceuticals, which was our first investment with Apollo. So what we did there is we wanted to invest into the space, travel to the Buck Institute in the US. They suggested to speak with a really smart person who maybe was really smart about what they want to do, meaning rapamycin analogs, but they really didn't know how to get to clinical trials, how to do fundraising as well. So it started with a 500K check. Then we asked them, what else do you need? And they needed 2.5 million, I think, more money, and didn't really have a clue how to get to the next steps. So they only had an entrepreneur in residence. So we started to hire the right people to do an external like research or study in order to really verify that what they're doing makes sense before we waste money, then put in more money, hired the right people, and got, I think 2 years later, a Series A of 37 million from Sovinova and One Bio. In the end, to also sum that up, as I mentioned, we also need to make money and an impact. We're still, because we do this venture creation, the biggest equity shareholder in that company, but we haven't put in most of the money. But as you start companies, you get a higher equity share versus if you invested the Series A, for example. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Questions?
Just wondering, when you're doing like sort of literature searches and like the initial screening, like how much do you need to be considered enough of a proof of principle for you to be interested in using that specific technology for venture creation?
I can't answer that too much into detail, but in general, we do the killer experiments, meaning what we want to do here in that as well is we want to define a hypothesis that maybe a scientist has. Then we do an external killer experiment to really sort of kill that idea. Let's put it really simple. We think that this compound prolongs lifespan. We test it. If it doesn't work, we stop it. If it does work, then we continue and like double down on it and increase the amount of, for example, mice and like the research in there. Are there more questions?
Yeah, there are specific types of technology, specific company areas that you guys are chasing. How do your founders, how do your team determine, oh, let's go after that?
Yeah. So we think that we have to go about all the hallmarks of aging because they're interconnected, meaning we cannot only focus on one of them, we need to focus on all of them. We have different people in the team that look for the neurodegenerative disease, for example. You cannot develop a drug right now against longevity because longevity is not a disease. So what we have to do is that we look at different disease areas that can be heart disease. We've done one oncology investment. So we have each experts in these areas, and they look at all the research that gets published in there in order to really double down on some investments and ideas. But in the end, we have to focus on all these areas that you can see here, because otherwise, for us, the risk would be too high. So diversification is key as well. Yeah.
And yeah, so I suppose you've got the normal VC model where you're looking to make returns within 10 years. Like, what are the limitations of that? And could you see yourself maybe adopting a different model, and how would that work?
So there is a lot of VCs raising. So a normal VC model works like you have a 10-year period in total. Like people you give me €100 or dollars. Then we have a management fee that we can hire the team, pay the team, and so on. And then in the end, you have like a hurdle rate and a carry, meaning how you as an investor in the end make money. The thing is with biotech and also in tech in general, it often takes a bit longer than the 10 years in order to sell a company and make more money. So in the past, there were something like secondaries, meaning there is another VC fund that invests into these companies which are not yet ready to sell to pharma. You don't get as much money as you originally wanted to have, but you still get some money. What's on the other hand possible that is you raise a growth fund, meaning we're saying, look, we have some amazing companies, but we can give you even more money if like you give us some more money to like buy the company with a new fund from ours, from the first fund, continue the company and sell it in 3 or 5 years. So these are potential or opportunities in order to keep the companies in the portfolio, continue with them on the growth, and then sell them later on.
It's not really a limitation.
It's for us, not really. It sometimes can be. What is more of a limitation is that a lot of investors who haven't invested in biotech in the past, they want to make money quickly. With biotech, you normally cannot sell a company in 3, 4, or 5 years. How you can do it in tech, you build a company like a software that works, then you can sell it, like really easily put. With biotech, you need to do all the research, so it takes 6, 7 to 9 years, maybe 10 years, in order to sell it to pharma or do an IPO. So it's hard to convince new investors of the biotechnology space, but people that are already in the space know that it takes a lot of time. There's huge entry barriers, but you can easily sell. I mean, one of our managing partners sold 12 companies to like M&A transactions and brought 19 companies public. And that for like many billions and a few hundred millions. So you can make a lot of money, but it takes time as well. And you need to convince investors about that. Yeah.
Exploration-based, you team like these conferences.
Yeah.
Are there other sources or inputs on your side of those two categories?
So we have a huge network in the VC area, I would say mainly Europe and the US. So the managing director that I just mentioned, he's worked with like 80% of the leading investors in there. And a lot of them don't do like early stage investments. They started Series A or B. So if someone reaches out to them, they can forward them to us. And we also get a lot of inbound deal flow because we started in 2017. A lot of scientists like know us right now because we're going to all these events. So they contact us as well, reach out to us, and then we can think about starting a company with them. Yes. Let's see. Pardon me? Yeah, I can answer that. Only Europe among, I think we have like 5 or 6 US investors. We wanted to do fundraising in the US because biotechnology is a lot more evolved here in the US and more investors are here. We had one meeting in San Francisco, then COVID hit in 2020, and the rest of the meetings was done in Europe, which was also hard to like do it only via Zoom. For the next one, so we have some institutionals, the KfW, which is a German development bank. Then we have shouldn't name them, but like a pension fund in there as well, some bigger family office, some high net worth individuals. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have 2 exit possibilities, an IPO or an M&A transaction. In the end, it's depending on the deal. And also not speaking about Apollo itself, but if you need to make money for your, like mostly in the past, an IPO has been better than an M&A transaction. You can make a lot more money, but our portfolio companies take a lot more time because we just started investing in 2020 to 2021. If I'm a VC and I need to return money to the investors in the next 2 years, the IPO window would probably not be that good. So before not making any return, I would sell it to pharma. But what we also do is we build platform companies to even diversify the risk more, meaning we have different compounds. For example, one we can sell to pharma, but the other one for another disease we can develop further and then make an IPO in there. Yeah.
Also, I think just like the founder of psychology business, really interesting. And I'm curious to what extent, like what percentage of the time do you find an interesting idea as a person, and then it's okay, like I don't want to make it right. Like I'd like to see this at time.
Yeah. I think even if that's the case, that wouldn't be that much of a problem because we can work on an agreement with them where we just use, let's say, their lab or their employees. They get a bit of money, or like the university gets a bit of equity in the company, but we can still work with them because they don't have to be a co-founder, chief science officer. We can do that ourselves and just work with their technology.
So what is the like scarce thing or like the biggest blocker in this space that's preventing you from just like starting say 100 companies per year? Is it
too much work? So I think like 60% of the investments that we do, but 80 to 85% of the work that we do is venture creation. So if you look at not Techstars, there's another tech accelerator in the Y Combinator in the US. I don't know how many 100 employees they have. If you look at Altos Labs, which has raised 3 billion, I spoke with Ravi yesterday. They already have a few hundred employees because they have the money and then like they can hire them. But for us, sorry, Altos Labs is biotech. Yes, exactly. So it's just a mean of capacity and how much work you can put in and still like have good companies that come out in the end versus doing like a spray and pray, build 100 companies. Maybe only 2 or 3 win, but the rest is going lost.
So it's not like a lack of ideas or lack of scientists to have these projects.
I mean, the science is evolving and there's more people who want to start companies. So it's also like we have to convince our investors just for us that what we do makes sense and that we can return money. So if we could raise 500 million and do the same that we do right now, and hire more people, maybe we would do that. But I think the risk of like not returning the money to the investors because we're not built operationally wise would be too high. So that's why we don't do it. But we want to like grow. The next one should be a bit bigger than the current one. And then like the next one should be bigger than that one. But like partially, not like double the size.
Thank you, Gabriel. This is the end of the session.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.